When I was in high school, the gifted program was called Unique Learning Experiences. There weren't very many AP classes, so I apprenticed as a piano tuner. I also built a harpsichord from a kit while I was in high school. I have it in my home office now. It really needs to be tuned. I'm Professor Mark Hinders, Applied Science Department at William & Mary. I'm here in my living room, and I want to talk about some work that we've been doing the last couple of years on using the signal processing techniques we've developed for structural flaw detection to identify flaws in recorded music. Now, I still have the very first CD that I bought. It's Vivaldi's Four Seasons, Boston Symphony Orchestra. And I remember when I first bought it, it was in the early days of CDs, and people said, "Why are you buying that?" And now I can happily say that I still have that. I, of course, have it digitized and moved over to other sorts of things, iPods and whatnot. But I still have that physical CD. I can put it in the car and play it if I want to. Older forms of music, vinyl, like the hipsters are listening to now, magnetic tape, all the way back to the Edison wax cylinders, those analog forms of recorded music, the physical media that it's recorded on is decaying. And it's kind of a serious issue. The Library of Congress and other places have rush programs to quick get all of those old things digitized before the physical media decays away and is totally unrecoverable. So once you've got a recording from magnetic tape or wax cylinder or vinyl digitized, then the issue becomes how do you go and fix it up to make it listenable, especially if you're talking about historical sorts of recordings that there isn't going to be a market for, but you want to have preserved for posterity anyway. Or maybe you've got a bunch of different historic recordings of a particular piece of music, and you want to figure out which one is the one that's in the best shape so that you can go through and methodically fix up the digitized files of it to make it work. So you might have things like pops and cracks. You could have in a live performance, you could have things like coughs and other sort of disruptions that were already built into the recording. But the real issue is if you've got an old magnetic tape or even wax cylinder recording of a thing, and you get it digitized, but the original medium had degraded. What can you do to it to fix it and make it listenable? And so we have an interest in this. This is my personal piano. It needs to be tuned. I showed you my harpsichord upstairs. It needs to be tuned. An engineer who prototypes for us, Jonathan Stevens, he also shares an interest in music and music preservation. He has a Steinway grand piano in his living room. He also has a harpsichord that he built when he was a teenager. And although he's a very talented engineer, he had considered playing piano professionally. I never considered playing piano professionally. I took lessons as a kid and so on. Jonathan got to know professionally the artist in residence at University of Wisconsin. And after he died, he was able to get many of the things that he had recorded in his own basement studio in Wisconsin in a stone house that he had built with his own hands. Man's name was Gunnar Johansson, really quite talented. And he was an expert on Liszt, and Johansson had recorded the complete works of Liszt as well as his own compositions. And Jonathan had gotten the tapes in shape and digitized them, and had been going through the painstaking process of identifying the flaws in the music, the recordings of the music, and fixing those up using the interactive computer tools that are available to do this. You display a spectrogram, you look at the music, and you go through and you find where the problem is, and you can fix it up and do some filtering on it to make it better. So that's a very tedious process. Jonathan and I were talking about this and how we could adapt signal processing that we've been doing in our lab to this. And one day, walked into the lab was an undergraduate student, Ryan Laney. And Ryan is typical for William and Mary. He's a physics, music double major. Composition was his particular focus in music. And Ryan did his senior thesis research in our laboratory. What he did was took the Wavelet fingerprint method that we'd been developing to identify flaws in ultrasound signals and other things, and adapted that to processing music. And it worked beautifully. What he found is that the fingerprint images, which are a time scale image rather than a time frequency image like you'd get with a spectrogram, the fingerprint images, what we would get is characteristic shapes that corresponded to particular kinds of flaws, a bad splice or a pop or a crack or various sorts of things. And the idea is that you can take a digitized piece of music, run the Wavelet fingerprint operation on it, and then identify those characteristic fingerprint features that correspond to different flaws. And you could, through a long piece of music, you could count up the number of them, and sometimes the severity of the flaw is something that we can quantify in the fingerprint as well. Sometimes the number of ridges in the fingerprint correlate to the severity of the pop or the crack or the bad splice or something like that. And so the idea is that you could take a digitized piece of music, run the Wavelet fingerprint operation on it, and count up the number of flaws that you have of the different types, and that would allow you to do triage on a lot of different recordings to see which are the ones that are already in the best shape and which other ones are going to require maybe too much work to go through and methodically make them listenable once again. And then the next stage in the research we expect will be to automatically identify the flaws and then automatically fix those flaws. And that could allow you to do something much more sophisticated than filtering sorts of things on a piece of music. Of course, you can do the filtering and whatnot as well. But if you can identify the presence of the flaws, the character of the flaws, and the severity of the flaws, you can then write algorithms to go back and automatically fix up the music. And this, we think, will be quite helpful going through historical libraries of recordings that have been digitized and fix them up and get them in a form that they're going to be listenable, even if there isn't much call for them commercially. Fun fact, the historical person that you know as Pocahontas was actually named Matoka. Her dad was chief of the Powhatan Confederation, and Pocahontas was his pet name for her. It roughly translates to Little Hellion. I'm Professor Mark Hinders, Applied Science Department at William & Mary, as.wm.edu, here at the Lake Matoka Amphitheater on campus.